Giants. Teak, when they hired Joe Judge, it is impossible to underestimate, the gravity of the task at hand, where it was consecutive years of worst cumulative record, 3-year span. That's a lot. I think it was 12-48, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was 12-48. Definitely the worst record over 3 years. Multiple picks that were drafted that just, didn't pop, and some confusion in the front office. McAdoo, who was woefully miscast as head coach. I mean, Ben McAdoo was lost.
Yeah.
His successor was much more buttoned up, but more of a coordinator, not maybe a head coach.
Yep.
The Giants are coming, and the Giants are coming in a big way.
Yeah,
they look pretty good,
look,
man.
the Giants don't they feel old school to you?
Yes, they do. They feel like the Giants.
Yes, that's right. Forget the old school, because this is how the Giants have always been. When they've won, they've had this formula.
Yep.
Play elite defense, which they did. The number one scoring offense in football was the Seattle Seahawks. Big play after big play, and they held them to 12 points on the road. So amazing defense they're playing, and more importantly, BT, and I love this, they're running the football. And it's not like, let me do these, stuttered draws and this nonsense. It's, I'm taking a guard, take a step back, pull across the center, and smash his head into somebody else, create a lane, and Wayne Gallman's downhill. Alfred Morris, who I just saw, has one of the most unique records in all of NFL. He's the only player to have scored a touchdown for 3 teams in one division.
Is that true?
Yes, obviously with the at the time Skins, but now the Washington Football Team, the Dallas Cowboys, and now with the New York Giants.
I don't mean to challenge the history here, but what about Ryan Fitzpatrick for the Jets?
As a running back.
As a running back.
Not as a quarterback. Not for throwing. But yeah, Ryan Fitzpatrick. I mean, that might be unique in itself for Ryan Fitzpatrick. To be honest with you, I got to think of others. But anyways, the point is, the Giants are doing it the old Giants way.
Yeah.
And look, some people might say, yeah, but they're not scoring 30 points.
Doesn't matter.
But
they will eventually.
Matter. Eventually they will. And they did it this weekend with a backup quarterback in Colt McCoy. Now, where does this all start? So I got to take a bigger picture simply because I've listened to it for a couple of years now. First of all, it's Dave Gettleman having a vision, and the Giants, even though Dave he got ill for a little bit, and I think he's doing better now, significantly better. He's getting a little bit older, and people are starting to question, well, why'd you bring this guy in? Why'd you do this? Why'd you make that trade for Leonard Williams and then sign him to his 5th-year option? It sounded asinine at the time. But look at Leonard Williams now. He's got 8.5 sacks. He's one of they took what was a discarded Jet player and turned him into one of the keys to that front seven. So credit belongs to Dave Gettleman, who brought him in. James Bradbury, who did a really good job of not shutting down, but at least containing DK Metcalf, who's one of the biggest and pains in the ass wide receivers in football. Because how do you stop him? He's too big and he's too fast. But they did a great job with it. And then more importantly, I think most importantly, hiring Joe Judge. Nobody knew who the hell Joe Judge was. I remember getting those questions, BT, at the very beginning. They hired Joe Judge? Who's that? I'm like, I have no idea. But Pat Hanlon, our buddy over with the Giants, hooked us up with him early.
Yep, very early.
Right? And he wasn't talking to anybody, wasn't saying anything.
Nope.
And we had him on, and afterwards we were like, all right, he's the guy. Right? You just felt it. You could feel from his no-nonsense mentality and the idea that, yes, it was going to be a little bit of a struggle because the Giants team was so used to mediocrity. 3 wins, 5 wins, 4 wins. So you were right, BT, 12 wins over 3 seasons, which was abysmal. But you knew that when you see him diving on the field in muddy puddles, getting fumbles, making his coaches and players run, like this discipline, like the little things matter, that they were heading in the right direction. And it's finally starting to show itself. And it's impressive, man. It really is. And you got to give them credit because the Giants had patience to stick with a plan, as opposed to, hopping around to 3 or 4 different ones trying to find the right path.
Which is what they were trying to do for a couple of years. Everyone was trying to hit the shortcut. And to be fair to the Giants, they were also in the very complicated position, partly by their own doing, because they allowed everything around Eli to erode to the point where he had no protection. The team was horrendous, and Eli was no longer, even on his best day, wasn't necessarily capable of taking an average product and making it elite. So
that's right.
The Giants would try to jump through hoops for a couple of years to to do right by Eli, still compete, fill the stadium, but they didn't do it systematically the way it's required, which is to get in, passionate football player. I'm not saying they were all without passion, but guys who love the game and guys who fit, and their decision-making has been much better. And I have something in front of me, from...
By the way, to your point about Eli, it gets really difficult with a team's all-time great, especially at quarterback, at the end.
That's my whole point. That's what I was inferring.
Yep.
That is not easy to do, especially in New York. I mean,
think Brett Favre, he had this issue, right? Yep. Phillip Rivers had this in a little bit.
Joe Montana had this.
It's just not easy at the end.
It was different with Rivers because I don't know that there's 80,000 Charger fans waiting to get into a stadium every Sunday, especially now.
Well, they weren't. They were in L.A.
Well, but even in San Diego at the end, there were some empty seats because they knew they were leaving. But I'm not trying to impugn the fandom of San Diego Charger, like those in San Diego. They were actually pretty good, but it's not the fervor.
That's right.
The pitch is different.
Dude, they were in a soccer stadium, like a 30,000 seat soccer stadium at the end.
But even the talk radio, people were just blasting Eli. I was hard on Eli. People were blasting the Giants, and that is just an album or a song, a song that's on loop that you cannot avoid if you work and live in the market. A little different in San Diego. But I've got a quote, all right?
Go ahead.
You know who I have a quote from?
Who?
You.
Go ahead.
I have a quote from Tiki, February 2nd, 2020. And the name of the article, or the title of the article, Tiki Barber loves Joe Judge's staff. Right? The subtitle, former Giant running back has high praise for New York's new coach. This is in February before the snap was taken, right? So he says, quote, Tiki says, I'm excited for the steps they're taking. I don't know Joe Judge, but when you look at how he holds himself, how he carries himself, the things he says, it gives you the belief that there's that focus on detail that Coughlin obviously espoused. The details and toughness. And then the staff he built, I love it. I'm biased because Jason Garrett's a friend of mine, but I think he's a great offensive mind. He's brought in a lot of experience, not necessarily pro head coaches, but people who have experience in leadership positions, and that's going to help this team, end quote. That is such a poignant, on-the-money assessment in real time, okay? Because they were devoid of I don't want to say character, but accountability for sure.
Accountability is the perfect
accountability.
word. Yeah.
The Giants were never, even at their worst, the Giants never represented Animal House.
No.
They started to take on that, just this lackluster, not buttoned up anymore, sloppy franchise. And that's not the Giants.
Yeah, you'd see it on the field a couple of years ago with guys like you're 2-12 at the time, and you make a defensive play, and you're acting like you're going to the Super Bowl. It's like, what are you guys doing,
you saying that. I remember you saying that too. Was it Eli Apple? Was that who's doing it?
I don't know if it was. It might have been. It might have been. Actually.
I remember you saying that.
I think it was because then the next year they got rid of him. I was like, good.
He's gone.
I'm like, good. I think he landed on his feet, but whatever.
No, the Saints cut him recently.
Oh, that's right. That's right. They did
Saints
cut him.
I think Carolina might have scooped him up. If I read that, I think Carolina might have.
BT, what have I always said to you about new head coaches? And I talk about this constantly. It's one thing to be a head coach. It is another to be able to hire a staff. All right, I've said this to you many times, and at first I think you were like, okay, but it's still about the head coach.
I did not fully understand.
Right?
I don't even know if I really cared to understand
when I first said it.
100%.
Yep.
I did not. I don't want to say I didn't accept it. Clearly, but I didn't embrace it the way I needed to because you're 1,000% right.
Right, because that matters. And I saw this firsthand when John Fox, our defensive coordinator under Jim Fossil, left. And then Coach Fossil, he couldn't find a replacement. And we ended up going with Johnny Lynn, who was good, but it wasn't the right fit for us. And it ended up affecting us, including in the 2002 wild card game against San Francisco, which everybody remembers. We blew that enormous lead. And so I became acutely aware of assistants at that point. And then when I retired and became an analyst and doing radio and all this other stuff, I really looked to that. Who the hell do you hire? Right? It's one thing to be the head coach, but you're not coaching everybody. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it matters who the assistants are. And so when Jason Garrett, former head coach, comes in. He's an assistant, offensive coordinator, an assistant to a head coach who has never had a head coaching experience. That's valuable. You bring in a guy like Patrick Graham, who has been known, and now you're starting to hear these stories. The dude's got like a photographic memory of plays that he called, 6 or 7 years ago, and circumstances and situations. And that type of guy is respected, and he's a great teacher. And so they built a good staff. And obviously talking about Joe Judge, but it's also Dave Gettleman. Mm-hmm. And so there was a plan. And when you have a plan, you're going to eventually find success. It wasn't pretty at the beginning, but eventually they found success. Now, what does this mean going forward? The NFC East is a disaster. You know what I mean? And it's really going to come down to who's playing best at the end. We're in December now. Who's playing best at the end? And when you start 0-5 like the Giants do, December is like, okay, whatever. Who still has a job in December?
Yep, hanging on.
The fact that they stayed dedicated to the plan tells you something. Now, they got lucky. Let's call it for what it is. They got lucky that the Dallas Cowboys are crap in the bed. They got lucky that the mismanagement that we talked about with the Philadelphia Eagles in our second segment of the show today happened, right? They're lucky that the Washington football team is in rebuild mode and they don't have a quarterback. They're lucky in that sense. But when you take opportunity, which is what's happening right now, and then there's preparedness and dedication and focus and, galvanization around one another, belief. You know what they call that, BT? They call that luck. That's what's happening with the Giants, right? This is opportunity and preparedness that have intersected, and the Giants right now are sitting atop the division. And if Washington loses right now, this game is on as we speak, to the Pittsburgh Steelers, then they're sitting in sole possession of first place. And even if the Redskins or the Washington football team wins, they beat them twice. So the Giants are in a great spot right now, despite having a 5-7 record.
I love what I see, and listen, it's painful enough watching my team, but just because of where I'm from and growing up, watching the Jets, not rooting for the Jets, but watching the Jets and the Giants every Sunday my whole life. Obviously, it's different now with the red zone, and I watch what I need to for work, the primary games, the important games.
By the way,
Titans.
I did that for the first time in a long time.
Oh, you did?
I only watched the red zone.
Oh, that's the way to do it, man.
I only watched the red zone, and I was able to absorb it all. I was kind of surprised.
Well, I record it. I still, because I do it with my son. I love to watch as bad as they are. I'm a fan. It is what it is. I just enjoy watching the Jets. But the point is, I should say I enjoy watching. I watch the Jets to satisfy and scratch the itch of my fandom and connect with my son, and it's a great thing we have. But I'm rolling on the red zone, back and forth, commercial, CBS, boom, hit last channel, go to red zone. Hanson catches you up, who's great, by the way. But you mentioned the Giants have had some luck, right? No question. They've also had some bad luck here because, let's face it, you mentioned the Cowboys. What happened in that game? They had a brilliant special teams play brought back on a touchdown.
That's a good point.
And they had another touchdown.
You're talking about the losses.
In a loss.
Yes.
That was negated. They had 14 points. They lost by 3 points that game.
Yeah.
So and that brought them to 0-5, so they really should have been 1-4, which isn't anything to shout about. But if you're 1-4 then and things went the way they are now, then you're 6-6 instead of 5-7. And even the run that they've been on, so 4 straight wins, right? Mm-hmm. The last loss was that Monday night game against the Bucs. They lost by 2 points.
Yeah.
The game before that, say what you will about the Eagles, but it was early in Philly's demise. In Philly, they lost by a point.
Yeah.
Then
that was the dropped Evan Ingram pass, right?
That was the dropped Evan Ingram pass on the left that would be on the left side.
That's right.
That Daniel Jones threw a great ball. You catch it, game's over, clock's done. He drops it instead. We know what happened. So that's bad luck. That's also bad execution, but that's bad luck. The Giants, and I can't say this about Dallas. I can't say this certainly. I can't say this about any, but 2 teams I think favorably for the future. I love Ron Rivera, and I love what I see from the Giants. Those two teams, in my opinion. Now, granted, Washington's going to have to figure out their quarterback spot eventually, and they will, I would think. Mm-hmm. And I like Daniel Jones, but still a little something to prove there. But the infrastructure now, finally, because Washington, that's been elusive for 30 years.
That's right.
The infrastructure for the Jets and Washington, solid.
Yeah, you mean the Giants and Washington.
Pardon me, the Giants and Washington.
No,
correct.
I agree, dude. And you know what? The Giants, and maybe I'm biased and it's ugly football, but I love it. That's how I grew up watching it.
Yeah.
And so, playing it, BT.
I'm sorry, T. Go ahead, bud.
I said, and playing it, because playing it, that's what we didn't want these blowout games. We just wanted to control the clock, control field position, make the smart plays, put yourself in situations, and execute in those situations. And that's what they're doing. And, it is what it is, and they're going to win a division, I hope. I
think that they are, because I thought they were going to lose yesterday. The Giants will win this division. I really believe it. Now, if Washington pulls off an upset today, I still, because the Giants won a game I never thought they'd win yesterday, I still think Giants win it. If Washington loses, Giants absolutely win this division. Let me hit 0-0
with 4 minutes off the clock.
Yep. Let me hit you with this real quick here, and it's probably a bigger topic for a different day.
Go ahead.
But at least give me a cursory glance as to what you're thinking. The one thing that I think, I don't know if problematic is the word, but it's going to take some serious thought, planning, and I don't know if there's an easy answer.
Go ahead.
What do you do with Saquon?
Very good question.
He's going to get money, and they're running the hell of the football. They're running the football without him.
Well, I think so. Here's what the greats do: they look at what their body of work, and then they look at what's working. So Saquon is one of the most dynamic, unbelievably explosive athletes we've ever seen at the running back position. BT. He's like Adrian Peterson. Watching him run reminds me of Adrian Peterson. The difference is Adrian Peterson was not afraid of contact. He wanted to smash you like Walter Payton. He wanted to put his head down. Remember, he'd get that, like, he'd start bobbing his head like this, and you're like, uh-oh, watch out.
Yeah.
Saquon, I think, has watched what's worked for this Giants team. It's downhill, power plays, get behind my pads, smash into the line of scrimmage, and eventually I'm going to come free. And that's what Wayne Gallman is doing. I think Saquon needs to adjust his style. And to be honest with you,
are you certain that he can?
Absolutely. I think he can. I think by necessity he will.
Okay. It's a different skill set,
But when you tear your ACL, when you hurt your knee, when you do any of these things, it changes your mindset to be Barry Sanders. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah.
And so
a little self-preservation kicks in.
That's right.
Yeah.
And what Saquon will learn, and it's just a film study, instead of trying to juke a guy, take an angle. Football is angles, right? It's angles and acceleration, and it's physics, right? Find an angle, take an angle. You are more powerful than 90% of the people who are going to be trying to tackle you, including linebackers I'm talking about. Run through a shoulder, make them make an arm tackle, and accelerate after that, and see what happens. It's much easier and safer than trying to be a jitterbug.
Thanks for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe, and don't forget to hit that bell to be notified when we drop fresh content.